Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. This is Queen at Nuworld Tarot, and I came across some really interesting information I really wanted to share my thoughts on with you all. Thank you to everybody who has been moving through this cycle with me of this new thing that I'm trying. I'm glad you guys like it. If you enjoy the content, please hit the subscribe button. Also hit the thumbs up button and make sure you turn on the notification bell so you will know every time that I come on and post a video for you. Just so you know, if you're new here, I do pause the video and commentate in between segments. So if you don't like somebody talking in between the video, then this is probably not the video for you. But I will give my honest thoughts on the information that I'm getting ready to share. So let's get into this.
World. Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Mutamba. Nzinga was the queen regnant of the joint kingdoms of Ndongo and Mutamba in modern-day Angola. She stood up to the Portuguese colonialists and defended her people from enslavement. Her brilliance, pride, and perseverance forced the Portuguese to recognize her kingdoms, and she remains a symbol of freedom and resistance to oppression to this day. Nzinga was the daughter of Prince Quilombo and his favorite concubine, Kingela Ka Nkombe. She was born during a difficult delivery. Her name, Nzinga, meaning to twist or to turn, was given to her because she emerged with the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck. This was thought to be a sign that the child would grow to be a powerful and proud person. A wise woman present at the birth predicted that the baby would grow to be a queen. When Nzinga was 10, her father ascended the throne and became Ngola, or king of Ndongo. Nzinga was a bright and engaging child and was favored by her father. As she was a girl, she was not seen as a potential heir or competitor for the throne like her brothers, so her father felt free to lavish attention on her. The princess was trained as a warrior to fight alongside her father and brothers. She was also taught how to read and write by Portuguese missionaries. She was nearly always by her father's side as he attended his many official duties, including legal councils, war councils, and important rituals.
So we see here that this young lady was under the influence of her father and not so much her brothers, who were supposed to be the ones that were the future rulers. So she's getting all of the tea from her dad about rulership, the tactics of war, the tactics of how to rule, how to be royal, what it takes. She's getting all this information from her dad, and it sounds like her brothers are not getting as much attention as she is. Okay? Pay attention.
She learned a great deal along the way. King Quilombo faced a very difficult situation. The Portuguese began taking over the coast of southwest Africa in the 15th century, enslaving the local people and transporting them to Brazil to work on plantations there. But in recent years, they had exhausted the coastal population and turned their attention inland to find more people to subjugate and fill the endless current of slave ships bound for the Americas. In 1571, King Sebastian of Portugal ordered the conquest of the Ndongo people. The Imbangala, a group of fierce and dreaded nomadic warriors, rumored to be cannibalistic, had joined forces with the Portuguese against the Ndongo. They wanted to seize Ndongo land and were happy to sell their prisoners of war to the European.
Black men, of these tribes were selling their people to European conquerors. This is history. Pay attention.
Additionally, many of the Ndongo leaders were willing to sell their own countrymen into bondage. King Colombo tried both diplomacy and warfare to defend his people, but more and more of them were being stolen away. In 1617, when Nzinga was 34, her father died, or perhaps was killed, and her brother Mbandi came to the throne. Mbandi had long been jealous of Nzinga's exalted position in their father's eyes. He was paranoid that her baby son might one day rise up against him, so he had the child murdered. He then had Nsinga and her sisters forcibly sterilized.
Are y'all listening to this? This man, instead of him getting up underneath his father, learning the art of war, learning how royal people think, what it takes to be a ruler, what it takes to rule people, what it takes to conquer, what it takes to protect, what it takes to provide, he murdered his sister's son and had her and his other sisters forcibly sterilized. This is his solution to the problem of his sister and her bright light that he saw shining. Pay attention.
That there would be no further sons to threaten his power. Heartbroken, furious, and fearing for their lives, Nsinga and her husband fled Ndongo for the neighboring kingdom of Matomba. And from a safe distance, they watched as their homeland fell into chaos, famine, and terror under Umbandi's weak and inept rule.
So her brother murked her baby, had her and her sisters forcibly sterilized, only to be a ruler that did not know how to rule. So he did all of that to prevent his sister from coming into rulership. But all he showed when it was his time to rule was weakness. He clearly got dominated, him and the people. This is what black men do with their rulership powers, ladies. Black women, I hope y'all paying attention. They said they want to rule. You won't let them. Pay attention.
Umbandi attempted to negotiate with the Portuguese, but he was no match for the indomitable colonial powers and was driven from his court. In desperation, he begged his sister to help him by serving as his ambassador to the...
Now ain't that about a bitch? You done toe tagged her baby and forcibly put sterilization on her and your other sisters. And when these conquerors come and conquer you, you run to her and beg her to save you. Does this story not sound familiar in 2022, black women? Does this not sound very peculiar to you? Is this not some behavior that we may still be seeing happening these days? Pay attention.
She was an ideal choice for this mission as she spoke fluent Portuguese. Out of a desire to help her people, she agreed, but demanded that her brother give her an official royal title, an entourage of attendants, and array her like a queen. While most Africans wore European-style clothing when meeting with the Portuguese, Nzonga dressed herself in the finest apparel of her people to display to them that her culture was not inferior.
So the rest of the bussies was running around there wearing the European clothes when they went to meet with the European leaders in order to negotiate with the Europeans. And then Nzinga said, no, sir. We will be wearing our traditional clothing to let you know we are not being ruled and conquered by you. So is this one of the reasons why black women appear to be masculine? Is it in your DNA to be masculine, black women? You have to ask yourself this. It gets better. Pay attention.
When she arrived in the port city of Luanda to meet the governor, all of the Portuguese men were sitting in chairs. However, there was no chair for Nzanga, only a mat on the floor on which she was expected to kneel in subordination. Noble Nzanga refused to lower herself and instead ordered one of her servants to get on all fours on the mat and act as her throne.
Right.
She was a talented and fierce negotiator.
Right.
And while face to face with the governor, they agreed terms of a peace treaty. The Portuguese would withdraw their troops from Ndonga, cease demanding tribute and raiding the land for human chattel, and recognize the kingdom's independent sovereignty.
So now her brother, who was supposedly the leader, right? Don't know what the hell he's doing. Done messed around and got conquered, got all the people sold and shipped off, okay? Done lost his power, done ran off and begged to his sister for her help after he done murked her baby, toe-tagged her child, and then forcibly sterilized her and her sisters so that they would not be in fear. He wasn't in fear of losing his superiority. Pay attention.
In return, Nsinga agreed to trade with the Portuguese, study Christianity, and be baptized. Nsinga remained in Luanda for 6 months, where she learned the Catholic faith and how to better understand the Portuguese culture. She was baptized and took the Christian name Dona Ana de Sousa in honor of the governor's wife, who stood as her godmother.
So the history of this whole godmother thing, people think that's just somebody that you assign over to watch over your children if something was to happen to you. But traditionally, a godmother was actually somebody who practiced the same Christian faith as you. And they were put over you as an overseer, a watcher, somebody who was to make sure that you were following the rule and some of the scriptures. Okay, that's what a godmother originally was. Of course, people use it however they want now, but that's not what the origin of it was. Okay, a godmother was actually just that, somebody who was supposed to be mothering, governing over you under the authority of God. Okay, pay attention.
Nsinga returned home in triumph and glory, and she publicly berated her brother for his weakness and failure as a leader. Mbandi had lost all support from the people, and in disgrace, he committed suicide by drinking poison.
So they said by drinking poison. So when she comes back after she does these negotiations with these conquerors, okay, which we know would be people of no color, right? These Portuguese people, she goes and she negotiates with them. And when she gets back, she's like, look at you. You don't even know how to rule. Like, look how weak you are. You are such a bussy. That's what you are. You are a bussy. You don't know how to lead. You done got people toe tagged. You done got us conquered. You done had them people take our land. I had to go over there and get these people to stand down. I had to go over there and handle my business. Now pay attention. She's following the rules, but she has a purpose. Okay? That takes masculine energy for you to rule over a people. That takes the masculine energy for you to be a leader. It takes that. Okay? Pay attention. Commercial. My bad.
Disgrace, he committed suicide by drinking poison. In 1625, Nsinga, now 41, took control of Ndongo. She was technically regent for her nephew, Kaza, the rightful male heir. Years earlier, Mbandi had entrusted his son to the care of the enemy warrior in Bengalas.
So her brother had entrusted his infant child's care to his enemies. The child that was meant to be the next ruler after his father, his dad entrusted his enemies to care for his child who was of royal stock. I want you to pay attention, Black women. Why are you masculine? Is this your God-given potential to be masculine? Because you have seen your men fail you time after time and you know you have to pick the pieces up? Because you know you are the backbone of your community? Because you know that when you do give them authority to fight and rule, they will fail? Is this why you're masculine? You might want to ask yourself that. Pay attention.
Been living with them ever since. Nsinga met with the chief of the Mbangalas. She flattered and seduced him and agreed to marry him. But when the Imungalas arrived for the wedding ceremony, Nzinga seized her nephew, stabbed him to death, and threw his body in the river, declaring to all that she had finally avenged her own son's murder.
So not only does this woman have to come and rescue her people, rescue her brother, save her face, save her family name, but she also has to come in and even save his child. That in his mind, because something's wrong with the way you think, not the way he thinks. In his mind, it made sense to give his infant child to his enemies to care for until it was time for his child to get old enough to rule over his people. That made sense to him, black women. These are the men that you're entrusting to give birth to their children. These are the men that you're entrusting with your life. Don't you know DNA passes down from generation to generation? Don't you know psychology passes down from generation to generation? Y'all better pay attention.
Nzinga was now secure on the throne of Ndongo, but she still had detractors among the nobility who were opposed to a woman's right to rule. Nzinga thus began living as a man, a common practice among female rulers in Central and West Africa, used to maintain their power. She engaged in masculine pursuits and took multiple husbands known as chibados.
Now, if this was something that she had to do to save her people, this queen, Nzinga, she had to turn around and live her life as a man, which was a common practice amongst these royal women in this area that she was in. Ndongo. A common practice that women would live their lives as men in order to keep rule, to keep the people safe, to fight the battles that the men clearly were not strong enough to fight. Is there a problem with your masculinity? You want to know why black men have a problem with your masculinity? Pay attention.
Ndongo, the chibados, existed as a third sex. They dressed as women and were able to marry men or women without stigma. They were an honored group of shaman who served as spiritual arbiters in political and military decisions and performed burial rites.
Shaman. These black men were shaman. They dressed as women and were allowed to marry men or women with no judgment. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Just wondering. Pay attention.
Nzinga's chibado husbands lived among her maids in waiting, but were forbidden to engage in sexual relationships with them. Europeans spread rumors that Nzinga's harem of husbands would fight to the death over who was allowed to spend the night with the queen. The peace Nzinga had negotiated with the Portuguese couldn't stand against the steamroller of imperialism and slavery. The Portuguese once again began to demand tribute, both monetary and human, from Ndongo. The queen sent messengers into neighboring lands, armed with words of freedom and resistance, and many people, unhappy living under the thumb of the Europeans, fled to Ndongo. When the Portuguese demanded Nzinga return the people they saw as their property, she replied that there were no slaves in her kingdom.
So this woman let these conquerors know when their people would flee from under their rulership, their slavery, their thumb, their oppression, and come to her in her land under her rulership, and they demanded those people back, she stood up for them. She said, ain't no slaves over here. I ain't giving you shit. If you want them, come get them. You bad. You want them? Come get them. Pay attention.
The Portuguese now saw that they would not be able to intimidate this dignified warrior queen or bend her to their will. So they used her gender and the fact that she had given up the Christian practices they had imposed upon her in an attempt to delegitimize her rule and
Now, she did, during negotiations, submit to Christianity. But as soon as she got that peace treaty, she was like, whatever. I'm going to do me. I ain't no damn Christian. Okay? Whatever. All right? Yeah, I'll do your little baptism ceremony. I'll praise your little God in front of you. Whatever you need me to do. Whatever you need me to say, I got you. And as soon as she went back home, she was like, anyways, back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay? Yo, pay attention.
Nzinga was proud, but she was also cunning. She knew that she would not win in an all-out war with the Portuguese.
Instead of rushing to work for someone else, you're free to freelance from wherever you feel free. That's right.
She knew that she would not win in an all-out war with the Portuguese. So she fled with her supporters to the Matamba region, where she courted new allies and planned her next move.
So this masculine woman was smart enough to know that if we go into an all-out battle, because I'm over here talking shit and telling them if they want these people, they're going to have to come get them. So they probably are going to come. But she was so masculine and so smart and so cunning that she said, let me get the hell out of here and go find me some more allies and get stronger so I can back these words up. I'm not strong enough to beat these people. Wisdom. Pay attention.
In this area, queens had ruled for centuries, and Nzinga's gender was far less of an obstacle. Nzinga continued to welcome escaped enslaved people and warriors from other tribes, and her army grew. Back in Ndongo, the Portuguese installed a puppet king, forced the people to convert to Christianity, outlawed their traditions, and enslaved and exported them at their whim.
So all of the people who did not follow her, everybody who stayed back and said, I ain't finna follow no woman. I ain't under no woman rulership. She too damn masculine for me. I can't go nowhere with her. I can't follow her. She said, listen, for those of you who want to live and want to live free, come with me. For those of y'all that want to die hard, you can stay here. She fled with the people. The people who fled with her were not conquered. The people who stayed in the land of Ndongo became slaves. Pay attention.
While another European power, the Dutch, moved onto the scene. They wanted to disrupt the Portuguese expansion in Africa and profit from the valuable trade in human bondage. The Dutch had already overtaken the neighboring area of the Congo. Nzinga looked at this powerful enemy of her enemies and sent her emissaries. She allied herself with the Dutch, and together they went to war with the Portuguese. Nzinga personally led her army into battle. She was a skilled soldier as she had received martial and weaponry training from childhood. Nzinga and the Dutch overtook the Portuguese city of Luanda. African leaders throughout the region, including the puppet king of Ndongo, submitted to Nzinga's rule. The Portuguese now saw that they had to take Nzinga very seriously.
So she took her army. When she fled and made herself stronger, she took her army and said to her enemies, listen, if we don't gang up against this other enemy that's coming, they're going to conquer both of our ass. So if you want to continue to be free and do what you do, and we want to continue to be free and do what we do, we don't have to team up together to get rid of these people. So this woman was so wise that she ganged up with another enemy against the enemy to conquer the enemy. See, that went over a lot of y'all head. Pay attention.
They regrouped, brought in reinforcements from Brazil, increased their firepower, and overwhelmed Nzinga's army. They took her sister Mkumbu, called Lady Barbara, as a prisoner and forced Nzinga to retreat once more. The queen continued to fight the Portuguese for decades, primarily using guerrilla tactics against their much stronger army. But eventually, she resigned herself that this was a battle she could not win with military might.
Now listen, yes, they did come and they did overtake her and she did start losing wars, but the important thing to remember, she continued to fight. The only thing that made her stop fighting is the fact that she was kept losing. She said, I can't keep sacrificing my people for a war that I clearly cannot win. But there were no black men by her side helping her. She had to go shoulder to shoulder with her enemies to defeat her enemies. Is this why you're masculine, black women? Because you are the true saviors of your people? Pay attention.
So she turned once more to her cunning and developed a political and economic plan to halt Portuguese expansion and make her joint kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba a force the Europeans would have no choice but to respect. Her plan was twofold. First, she placed her military forces between the Portuguese and the lands they raided for people to enslave, cutting off the slave trade in the area. Next, she reached out directly to the Catholic missionaries, claiming she wanted to convert her kingdoms to Christianity. The missionaries were so enthralled by Queen Nzinga that many of them volunteered to act as her emissaries to the European leadership and even to the Pope. With the might of the church on Nzinga's side, the Portuguese governor had little choice but to open up peace negotiations, release her sister, and eventually recognize Queen Nzinga.
This woman was so smart in all of her masculinity that she got the Christians to even come against the Pope on her side. This is how wise and cunning this woman was. But your masculinity is a problem for black men, even though you have been carrying them for centuries. They don't want to talk about this though, y'all. Pay attention.
As the official ruler of Ndongo and Matomba. Now in her 70s and finally secure on her throne, Nzinga turned her focus on domestic matters and concentrated on rebuilding her people who had been devastated by decades of warfare. She resettled refugees of the slave trade in her lands and encouraged women to bear children. And she promoted trade by capitalizing on her kingdom's strategic position as the gateway between the coast and the Central African interior. She waged one more military campaign to rid her people of the continued threat of the Umbangala warriors. She decapitated the Umbangala leader and brought his head to the Portuguese governor. In her final years, Nzinga maintained her hard-won peace with the Portuguese by building churches and hosting baptisms. The 75-year-old queen also entered into a monogamous Christian marriage with a handsome young warrior, 1/3 her age. But Nzinga also maintained the pride of her people and her place as their queen. She dressed fabulously, sporting the finest brocades, silks, velvets, and perfumes from Europe, while maintaining the style of her African people. And she always wore a royal crown when conducting official duties. Queen Nzinga died peacefully in her sleep in 1663 at the age of 80. She was briefly succeeded by her sister Munkumbu, who outlived her by 3 years. After that, the kingdom fell into civil war over which male heir would reign next. Without Nzinga's strength and leadership, the kingdom she had dedicated her life to building and defending fell to the ever-expanding Portuguese slave trade.
So when this Queen Nzinga, passed away, the black men were too busy fighting about who would be the ruler, and they got conquered. Does that not sound familiar to you all? Does that not sound like something that we hear about today? What do you see black men doing? Fighting. Who's going to be the next Kevin Samuel? Who's the next one going to put these black women in their place? Who the next one? Why black women got so much weave in their hair? Why they run around get BBLs? Why they don't want me? Why they on Instagram? Why they being thoughts? Why the black men don't support each other? Why? While they're being conquered. I would prefer black women be masculine if I got to depend on black women for my survival. Why would I want you to be anything less when you're living in a male-dominated society? It doesn't make sense for you to be anything less than masculine in a male-dominated society, and you're the one leading your people. Clearly, this has been happening for centuries.
Incorporated into Portuguese Angola in 1671, 8 years after her death. But Nsinga did pave the way for women to lead. Queens ruled the Ndongo people for 80 of the 100 years following her death. Today, 36% of the Angolese legislature is made up of women, compared to 32% for the UK and 23% for the US. Women in Angola display remarkable social independence and are found in the country's army, police, government, and economic sectors. Queen Nsinga is revered for her political, martial, and diplomatic brilliance. She is held up as a symbol of freedom and resistance to oppression, and is celebrated as the mother of Angola.
The mother of Angola. Look. Oh God, I have so much to say. So we hear this narrative going around where, oh, black men are complaining about black women being too masculine. Black women are masculine. Black women don't know their place. Black women don't know how to submit. But when black women submit to black men, do you see the outcome? Everyone gets conquered. I don't know about y'all, but I think I'm gonna trust my life in the hands of a masculine black woman before I would in a black man. Because it looks like throughout history, when black men were throwing the ball and they were supposed to hit the alley-oop, they missed the shot. I don't know a whole lot about basketball, but I heard the alley-oop before my kids was talking, but I'm just saying though. Okay, like, what exactly do black men expect from you? If it's in your DNA to rule, if throughout history you have been the ones who have had to step in during their rulership and save your people, if you are the one who has had to step in and even save their offspring because they aren't wise enough to make decisions that make sense for their own children, then what else would you be except masculine when you're living in a masculine-dominated society? What else would you be? What else could you be? This is a question I think black women, you really need to start asking yourselves. Because your self-esteem you're taking blows. Black men are taking blows at y'all's self-esteem. They're trying to bring you lower than what you already are. Society already makes you feel a certain type of way for being black, for being strong, for being beautiful. But what they're not telling you is that it is in your DNA to be rulers. Centuries and centuries and centuries have you been doing this. And there's still remnants of it in society today. But they ain't telling you that. They're not telling you that the reason why you're masculine is because you're supposed to be sitting high up with the men. You are the one that's supposed to be negotiating with the men. You are the one that's supposed to be ruling over the people. They aren't telling you this. Listen, don't let nobody make you feel no certain type of way about you being a masculine woman. Don't do it. The next time you are on the internet and one of these nakers get up in your chat box and call you masculine, you tell them Queen Nsinga was too. And if it wasn't for her, all you dusties would be conquered. That's what you tell them. Because black women, you've been running in and saving these niggers for centuries, honey. So when they call you masculine, I want you to take your bow. Take it as a compliment. Your masculinity is sexy. I'm just saying.